She said she was just going out to buy milk and then vanished for 10 years. Katya Belaya, a mother of three and a respected college lecturer, walked out of her home one evening in September 2014. She wore a light jacket, took her purse and car keys, and said she'd be right back. But she never returned. No texts, no calls, no reported accidents. No one saw her on the road. Her phone went silent. Her bank account was untouched. And dinner was still on the table. Police searched. Her family put up posters. The community prayed. But as the days turned into years, everything slowly faded, like morning fog on a quiet lake. No one thought to look at that lake, less than 2 miles from her home. Then, in December 2024, a group of amateur volunteers, armed with nothing more than sonar equipment and an anonymous tip, discovered a white minivan resting deep underwater. Inside was the nearly skeletal body of a woman. She had been there the whole time. And now, as the vehicle is pulled from the lake bed, one question lingers, colder than the water itself. How did no one see it? How did no one hear anything? And how did no one find her until now? Katya was never someone who stood out. She wasn't wealthy. Her past wasn't dramatic. She didn't live in the spotlight. But in her small corner of the world, she was everything. A science lecturer at Eastern Florida State College, this Russian-born woman lived quietly and devotedly in Palm Bay, Florida, raising 3 growing children on her own. She taught biology, a subject many students dreaded. But through her passionate, engaging style, Katya made even the most insecure students feel like they could understand the world. She didn't just teach about cells, one former student recalled. She taught us patience. She made me feel like I was worth the effort. But behind the classroom door, Katya was a resilient single mom. 3 kids, each with their own personality. No welfare, no help from family back home. Her days were a blur of lectures and discount grocery runs. Her nights spent grading papers while her kids slept. Neighbors remembered her as the woman who always gave a gentle smile in the morning, greeting them in soft, Russian-accented English. No one ever saw her angry. No one ever heard her complain. And maybe that's what made her disappearance even harder to understand, because no one expected that a woman so responsible, so loving, with no debts, no shady ties, could just vanish without a trace. In the final years before she went missing, Katya had become more withdrawn. She still taught, still took her kids to school, but often declined social invitations. Close friends said she began to show signs of exhaustion, not in her body, but in her spirit. She once messaged a friend back in Russia, "I'm fine, just sometimes it feels like no one's really on my side." But there was one thing, one small detail, that not even her closest friends knew. And later, when they looked back, they all wondered how they hadn't seen the signs sooner. A week before she disappeared, Katya emailed HR at her college. There was nothing alarming in the message, just a request for 2 days off for personal reasons. At the bottom, she added a soft note. "I'll return as soon as things are sorted. Thank you for understanding." No one thought much of it, because Katya wasn't the kind of person to make noise. She worked hard, kept to herself, and always put others first. So when she said personal reasons, people assumed it was something private, maybe a health issue, maybe family. But it was that quietness that made it easy to miss. She was slipping into a deep, silent loneliness. She had no close relatives in the US. Her ex-husband had long been out of the picture. Her children were the center of her universe. But sometimes, being a single parent means you have to be strong, even when you're breaking inside, say. Later, when asked, Katya's oldest daughter admitted, sometimes she'd stare out the window, like she was listening to a voice we couldn't hear. She left no note, no goodbye. The house showed no signs of a struggle. The fridge was stocked. Her laptop was still open to an online teaching portal. There was one small detail, almost overlooked, but it would come back to haunt everyone. Before she left that day, Katya had made her bed, neatly, too neatly. And on the kitchen table, she left a small card, blank, with a picture of lavender on the front. Lavender was her favorite flower. No one knew what it meant. But no one asked. Not until it was too late. Because just hours later, Katya walked out the door, slipped the key into the ignition, closed the door behind her, drove away, and disappeared from the world. That was the last time anyone ever saw her. Just going out for milk. Just a few minutes, right? But for Katya, those few minutes turned into 10 long, silent years. At the bottom of a deep, dark lake, On the evening of September 27, 2014, around 8 p.m., Katya Belaya told her eldest daughter she was stepping out for a bit to buy milk. She grabbed her purse, put on a light beige jacket, Michel's, and left in her familiar white Honda Odyssey minivan. That was the last time her children ever saw their mother. At first, no one was worried. It wasn't unusual for Katya to run errands late. The convenience store was just a few minutes' drive away. But when the clock hit 9, then 10, then midnight, the house slowly sank into unease. Her daughter texted her, no reply. Called her, no answer. There was no sound of a car pulling in, no jingling keys, no familiar footsteps at the door. By morning, with no sign of Katya, the kids called one of her close friends. Then they called the police. Officers arrived and documented the scene, but nothing seemed out of place. No signs of forced entry, no evidence of a struggle, no indication that she had been taken or hurt inside the home. They filed the report as a missing adult, but there was no immediate cause to suspect foul play. After all, Katya was an adult. She had the right to leave, if she chose to. Days passed. The car never turned up. No traffic cameras caught her license plate. No accidents were reported. No witnesses recalled seeing her that night. Her phone went dark at exactly 8:37 p.m., about 30 minutes after she left home. Her bank account remained untouched. No purchases, no credit card activity, no digital trace. It was a total disappearance. The family began posting flyers. Her students organized search parties. There were prayer circles, Facebook groups, countless emails to hospitals, shelters, police stations, but nothing came of it. In the eyes of the law, Katya was just another adult who had gone missing. But to her children, she was a mother taken by something no one dared to name. One theory emerged, an accident. Maybe she lost control of the car, drove into a ditch or a body of water that hadn't been thoroughly searched. But search teams found no trace. If there was GPS data from her phone, it was never shared publicly. And for 10 long years, no one thought to look carefully. Just under 2 kilometers from her home, time moved on. With each passing year, the flicker of hope dimmed, replaced by a quiet, lingering grief. But if she did die that very night, why did her phone shut off so quickly after she left home? And more hauntingly, why did no one, for an entire decade, discover the van sitting silently beneath the lake's surface? 10 years passed. During all that time, Katya Belaya's case sat quietly among the ranks of Florida's long-term missing. The police didn't close it, but they had no new leads, no witnesses, no suspects, no promising evidence. Her family never gave up. Each year, her eldest daughter held a small candlelight vigil outside their old home. The kids kept texting their mother's number, even though they knew no one would ever answer. Online, Katya's story would occasionally resurface. Posts titled, "Do you remember Katya?" would get a few dozen shares, then slowly fade into the background, lost in the flood of newer headlines. But in that silence, a light finally broke through. In December 2024, a volunteer group called Sunshine State Sonar decided to take another look at Katya's case. They weren't police. They weren't paid, but they had sonar equipment, a small boat, and one mission: to find the forgotten. The group had already recovered numerous vehicles from Florida's waterways, from stolen cars and accident wrecks to submerged vehicles tied to unsolved crimes. They believed that in a state full of lakes, rivers, and hidden ponds, many answers were buried underwater. Then came a message, anonymous, short, and haunting. "I can't stop thinking about Katya Belaya. Try checking the lakes around Palm Bay." No proof, no details, but it was enough to set the team in motion. Just days before Christmas, they arrived in Palm Bay. Beneath the chilly, damp air of a Florida winter, they began scanning every pond and retention basin near the neighborhood where Katya once lived. Within hours, something stood out. In a small, unmarked lake, tucked behind a row of homes, no signage, no lights, their sonar picked up a strange shape, about 4 meters long, with contours that resembled a vehicle, buried in the mud. Still, erased by time. They marked the coordinates and scanned it again. The 3D sonar image came into focus. A minivan. Same size. Same shape. Same model as the Honda Odyssey Katya was driving the night she vanished. No one said a word. The team just stared at the screen, hearts pounding. The next day, professional divers went in. The water was still. as if it had held its secret for a decade without ever rippling. But the moment the first cable touched metal, the silence shattered. It was her van, a white Honda Odyssey. The doors were locked, the windows clouded with mud and time. The license plate, faded but still legible enough, left no doubt. And inside, once the door was finally opened, they found human remains. The group called the police. The area was sealed off, and this time, the case could no longer be ignored. The lake had never been searched back in 2014. It wasn't near a main road. There were no signs pointing to it. And at the time, the neighborhood maps hadn't even been fully updated. But what left people stunned was the distance. The van was found just over a mile from Katya's home. A 3-minute drive. A 20-minute walk. So close. And yet, so hidden. No one could say why police missed it in the first search. Some blamed outdated maps. Others pointed to the limitations of early search equipment. And many simply stayed quiet. Because it was too painful to accept the truth. They had passed by that lake hundreds of times, never knowing a mother had been lying there all along. Once the van was pulled from the water, a full forensic examination followed. The remains inside were far beyond visual identification, but through dental records and DNA from her family, the answer was confirmed. It was Katya Belaya. She had never left. She had never abandoned her children. She had been there, in that lake no one ever thought to check, for 10 long years. How did a group of unpaid volunteers find her in just a few hours? When an entire professional system, with years, funding, and technology, spent more than 3,600 days and came up with nothing? At the end of 2022, the investigation was reopened. Police in Durango, working with forensic technicians and a special task force, began re-examining the records of everyone who had worked at the Cañón del Silencio Nature Reserve in 2015. One name stood out, a name everyone recognized, but no one had ever questioned. Valerio Suarez. Valerio was a veteran park ranger. He had spent over 2 decades living in the forest. No wife, no children, no close friends, no social media presence. His personnel file showed he resigned just months after the disappearance, citing mental health concerns. When investigators traced his last known address, a small wooden cabin he once called home, they found it abandoned. Inside, they discovered a locked wooden chest. Inside the chest, an old notebook, frayed rope, and a dusty handheld radio. In the notebook, one entry had been written in dark ink. They come. They take photos. They laugh and break the silence. No one understands the forest is in pain. No one hears it. The girl, she saw. The handwriting was erratic. Some words had been scratched out and written over with heavy strokes. But one word appeared over and over again. Silencio. Silence. Psychological experts later noted that the writing showed signs of obsession, even delusion. But to investigators, it hinted at something else. A fragile mental state that could spiral into something dangerous. And then, a crucial detail. The rope found in the chest was made of the same type of nylon as the small fiber fragments discovered embedded in the tree where Lucia and Mateo's remains were found. Forensic testing confirmed it. Same fiber structure, same light gray-blue color, same level of decay. A 97% match. It wasn't enough to make an arrest, but it was enough to launch an official manhunt. Soon, Valerio's name spread across the internet. Photos of Don Valerio began circulating, along with a flood of rumors and theories. Some claimed he could be seen in the background of tourists' landscape photos, standing silently among the trees. Others said he once chased them for stepping off the main trail. Some swore they heard him muttering, "No one touches the forest unless the forest allows it." A local journalist, who had closely followed the disappearance of Lucia and Mateo, released an old, never-aired interview clip. In it, Valerio was asked directly about the missing couple. His reply? Some people go too far, and some places don't want to be seen. His voice was calm, his eyes unblinking. After that, no one ever saw him again. No address, no ID activity, no documents, nothing after 2016. Authorities issued a silent warrant, but many believe Valerio never left the forest, that he's still out there, hidden in some rocky crevice, a rotting cabin beneath thick canopies, living as part of the darkness the forest chose to keep. And if that's true, maybe he isn't the killer. but he almost certainly knows what happened. When the remains were confirmed to be Katya Belaya, her family was overwhelmed with a mix of emotions. There's no single word that can fully capture the collision between relief and heartbreak. Part of them had waited 10 years for this, a resolution, an answer, but the other part had never imagined they'd have to face the truth, that their mother had been underwater for a decade, less than 2 kilometers from home. Katya's eldest daughter, now an adult with a career of her own, was the first to stand quietly by the lake where the van was found. In her hands, a faded photo, a picnic with her mother and siblings. She lit a small candle and sat in silence. "When Mom disappeared, I was angry," she said in a brief interview. "I thought she left us. I thought maybe she just couldn't handle it anymore. But now I know she never left. She was left behind." Her words struck a nerve and ignited a wave of public emotion. People began asking questions, not just about the past, but about the system itself. Why wasn't the van found sooner? How did a location so close go unchecked for so long? The Brevard County Sheriff's Office told the media, at the time there were no clear signs of an accident, no cameras, no witnesses, no pings from her phone or vehicle. "We didn't ignore it, we just had no data." But that, many argued, was exactly the problem. Had the investigation been driven by assumptions, instead of exhausting every possibility? Even more confusing was the state of the vehicle. The minivan had no broken windows, no signs of a crash, no airbag deployment. The doors were locked from the inside. It didn't look like an accident. There were no tire tracks, no reported sightings, no noise, no trace. And that's when another theory began to surface, one no one dared say out loud at first. What if she drove into the lake herself? Was it suicide? Was she disoriented? Or was someone else involved and time had erased the evidence? No one could say for sure, but no one could stop thinking about it. Days after the vehicle was recovered, a preliminary forensic report was released. There were no signs of head trauma, no broken bones, no lacerations or visible injuries. The body was far too decomposed to determine a clear cause of death. But one detail stood out, something small yet deeply unsettling. Katya was still wearing her seatbelt. That fact alone sparked debate. In most accidents, the first instinct is to unbuckle, to try and escape. But she hadn't. She stayed in place, as if she had accepted it, or was no longer conscious when the car went under. Investigators confirmed there were no signs that anyone else had been in the vehicle. No foreign DNA, no blood, no suspicious mud or markings. But after 10 years submerged, how much truth can really survive? No one knows if Katya died from an accident, suicide, or something else entirely. No one knows if someone had been with her that night. And no one can say for certain that it was just an unfortunate incident. Another haunting question began to rise, this time not forensic, but deeply human. Did Katya ever call out for help? Did anyone hear her and do nothing? Neighbors, when interviewed again, began remembering small things. It had rained lightly that night. Someone thought they heard a vehicle speeding past the lake, but brushed it off. Another recalled their dog barking toward the water for days afterward, but didn't think much of it. Just fragments, small details. But now, they feel like permanent scars. Because Katya's story isn't just a missing person case, it has become a symbol of something deeper. What it means to be forgotten. A quiet immigrant woman. No close family in the US. No scandals. No drama. No noise in life. And therefore, silence in disappearance. The real twist in her story isn't about evidence. It's the truth that an entire system failed to hear someone's cry for help, simply because she didn't scream loud enough. As her daughter said, no one wanted Mom to disappear, but no one stopped it either. Maybe Katya didn't die from a crash. Maybe she died from silence. When every clue leads to a dead end, all that's left is doubt. Doubt in what we thought we knew. Doubt in what was accepted as fact. The car had been there for 10 years. No one saw it. No one heard it. No one checked carefully enough. And for a decade, people believed Katya had walked away, that she chose to disappear. But the truth was simpler and crueler. She was forgotten. No witnesses. No surveillance. No journey logged. Nothing, except a sealed vehicle and a skeleton that can no longer speak. Every theory began to fall apart. An accident? Then why no impact? Suicide? but she had just emailed her school to take a short leave and wrote she'd be back soon. She had just stocked the fridge. She had an online teaching session scheduled. Disoriented, but the trip was minutes long, in a neighborhood she had lived in for years. She knew those streets better than anyone. And then someone remembered a detail, buried deep in old case files. A year before she vanished, Katya had called 911. She said an ex-boyfriend was harassing her outside her home. She didn't file a report. She didn't ask for protection. She just wanted it on record in case something happens. That file was forgotten. Until now. Police haven't named him as a suspect. They say there's no evidence, no trace, no grounds to reopen the file. But for many, that was the first crack in the system's trust. If they missed that detail, what else did they miss? The silence from officials, the refusal to explore further, and the quick closure of the case after finding her remains left her family with a hollow kind of justice. Justice for the body, but not for the truth. And then a question arose, not from investigators, but from Katya's daughter. If it were their mother, would they have stopped this easily? And one last detail, a question that still stings. Why were her shoes in the car, but her purse was gone? The car was recovered, the body identified, the missing person file officially closed. Legally, Katya Belaya's story had an ending, but for those she left behind, the truth was only beginning to unravel and then left hanging. No one was charged, no one held accountable. No allegations, no apologies from the system, no internal review, no investigation into how it was missed. Just a brief statement. The remains have been identified as Katya Belaya. There is no evidence of foul play. And then, silence. On the first anniversary of her discovery, Katya's 3 children, now grown, gathered by the lake. No cameras, no media, just an old photo frame, a bundle of lavender, and 3 quiet faces gazing into the water, the same water that had held their mother for 10 long years. Her eldest daughter read aloud from a handwritten letter. "Mom, I'm sorry for doubting you. I thought you had left us. But now I see. We were the ones who left you, even though you were closer than anyone could imagine." A single candle flickered by the lakeside. The wind was still, the water undisturbed, as if the lake was keeping its secrets, unwilling to let anything else rise to the surface. An independent journalist who had followed the case from the beginning summed it up. The question is no longer what happened to Katya. The real question is, how did we, all of us, let it happen? Because maybe Katya didn't die in an accident. Maybe she died in a world where quiet women are assumed to be fine, where those who don't scream, don't fight, don't demand, simply go unheard. And perhaps the final question was never who killed Katya, but rather, who didn't hear her cry for help? No one answered. No one apologized. No one was punished. But no one forgot.